Good afternoon, everyone. We're just letting folks in from the waiting room, so we'll be another minute or two. Okay, looks like we've got a pretty good turnout. There's nobody else in the waiting room just this moment. So I want to go ahead and get started. Just a reminder to everyone, we are recording this afternoon session for students who can attend, so we have disabled your camera and your microphone. If you have any questions, please do share them in the group chat. This afternoon session is being offered to us by the Office for Online Learning so that you all can have support in your efforts as teaching assistants in this new virtual educational world. Brianna is an instructional designer out of the Office for Online Learning. She has been working with faculty all during spring and summer to make sure that their courses are well designed and set up for online learning. And we're very excited to have her here today. Just so you know, she will ask for questions at some point during the talk. If you have any questions, please do go ahead and put them into the chat box in the lower section of your screen. With that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Brianna.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for having me here with you today. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and we're going to jump right in. I know that you've had some long days of training and working through these new roles that you'll be embarking on. So as we go through today, I want you to keep in mind that much of what we're going to talk about is higher level concepts and ideas and best practices for facilitating online courses. You're going to have some restraints based on the instructor that you're working with and what their expectations are. So often I will reference checking in with the instructor of record and making sure that you understand what their expectations and goals are as you are participating in their class with them. So we're going to start with some basics of facilitating online learning. So when we are thinking about online learning, it's going to be different than face-to-face, obviously, but there are some differences that are the obvious ones and then some that are a little less obvious. So we want to think about the aspects of teaching online that are going to need more attention than you might have given them in a face-to-face course. So one thing that's going to be important to clarify with the instructor you're working with is whether they're using a synchronous or an asynchronous course. And synchronous and asynchronous are standard terminology when we're talking about online courses. Not everyone always recognizes what these mean. So synchronous is being any course activity that you and students are all participating in at the same time. In a face-to-face course, this is going to happen obviously when you are on campus and in the same room and interacting with each other. Online, this is going to be when everyone is together in Zoom like we are here today. In terms of an asynchronous course situation, we're talking about students being engaged in the same activity, but at different times. So in the face-to-face course, your students might watch a lecture or a video before they come to class, and then you may have used class time for discussion. Online, this could be a discussion board that students participate in throughout the week. When you are thinking about the face-to-face, instruction is synchronous. Online, since it can be both, You're going to want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of what that expectation is from the instructor of record. So with all courses being taught online this fall, your instructors have the option of designing their course to be synchronous or asynchronous. And it's important to know what that structure is and what the expectations will be for you as you participate in the course. I'm seeing a wide mix. I'm seeing some faculty members who have chosen to have a completely synchronous class. So their class was scheduled to meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 50 minutes. They plan on having 3 synchronous sessions, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, to accommodate that schedule. While others have chosen occasional synchronous sessions, and a few have even chosen completely asynchronous courses because they have very large lecture classes that are harder to facilitate more personal interaction. Another aspect of online teaching that varies from face-to-face is this idea of delivering knowledge versus facilitating learning. In a typical face-to-face course, your instructor is actively delivering content, and students are often passive receivers of information. In online courses, instructors become facilitators who engage students to interact with the material and guide discussion. Students are expected to take much more of an active role in their learning in an online course. As a TA in a course, you can support students' active learning by engaging students in thinking about the learning materials. This might be through discussions, synchronous or asynchronous, or by facilitating group learning activities in synchronous sessions. In terms of presence, it's not automatically built into an online course. In a face-to-face course, simply being in the same room with your students provides that presence. Students know that you're there, you can ask questions, they can ask questions, and you have that interaction. In contrast, online facilitators need to be deliberate about making their presence felt in their online course. Most often, this is done by communicating regularly with students, guiding discussions, and providing timely feedback. And then lastly, we want to create opportunities for student engagement. Like presence, engagement is not automatically present in an online course. When designing a course, instructors need to build on opportunities for students to interact with the content, with you, with themselves, and with other students. Depending on your role in the course, you should expect to create and engage in similar types of interactions with students. So think about ways that you can actively involve students, whether it is something along the lines of creating study groups or providing some prompts and asking some questions in discussions to help spur that engagement from students. So within a course, an instructor or a facilitator is going to wear many hats. Most commonly, these hats fall into 4 main roles. We talk about the pedagogical role, the social, the managerial, and the technical. In terms of the pedagogical role of online instruction, this revolves around facilitating learning for students' understanding of critical concepts, principles, and skills. So common tasks in this pedagogical role include knowledge building, encouraging students' knowledge sharing through interactive discussions, designing a variety of educational experiences, providing feedback, and referring to external resources or experts in the field. An example of this role can be seen when facilitating effective online debate. As a facilitator, you need to identify controversial topics, encourage a balanced discussion on both sides, and provide evidence and counterexamples, and even summarize the online discussion to raise debates to a higher level. So by bringing in outside resources and providing support and guiding those debates and those discussions, you can help increase students' understanding of the material that they're working with. The social role of online facilitation typically occurs to promote a friendly environment and build a learning community. Online social roles are going to require facilitators to develop nurturing skills by encouraging participation, giving ample feedback, and attending to individual student concerns. In an online learning community, participants have a strong sense of belonging and are ready and willing to contribute to knowledge building of the class. Not only do facilitators need to establish a leadership role to help create the learning community, they also are expected to model social best practices to motivate and engage students. In the managerial role, which you might spend a lot of time doing, the facilitator attends to tasks that are organizational, procedural, and administrative. Such tasks might be coordinating assignments, managing online discussions, handling overall course structure and uploading of materials. And these are some of the typical managerial roles. The instructor that you're working with should set clear guidelines and expectations in the online course in order to facilitate this positive learning experience and to make clear to you what aspects they expect for you to handle throughout the course. And then lastly, there's the technical role. This helps make participants comfortable with the systems and the technologies used in an online course. This role does not mean that you must be a technical expert. Things such as referring students to technical support resources, addressing technical concerns, and helping diagnose and clarify problems are part of this role. Whether we like it or not, instructors typically are the first point of contact when a student encounters technical problems. Knowing how to help or where to send students for help allows the learner to concentrate on their academic tasks. The student support does not solely fall on the instructor. Be sure that you familiarize yourself with academic and student support services that Loyola has to offer students. Things like the ITS Support Desk, the Tutoring and Writing Centers, university libraries, and the Student Accessibility Services are all in place to support students as well as faculty teaching both face-to-face and online courses. In terms of presence and engagement, these are two of the most important dynamics for online courses. Creating good presence and engagement is highly correlated to student success and satisfaction in online courses. So it's worth taking time to create both. Students feel instructor presence in an online course when the instructor is active and engaged. Some strategies that help create presence include introducing yourself. Since you will have a significant role in the course, it's important for students to know who you are and your role within the course. So introduce yourself, whether it's in a forum or during a synchronous session. Students need to get to know you. You want to plan for consistent, regular communication. If part of your role is giving feedback or sending announcements to students, you want that to be consistent and regular. So you also want to ensure that you understand the professor's policies and expectations for communication. You might set some communication expectations of your own based on the extent of your role. But clear and consistent communication is important for student success and to help students feel connected to you and others in the course. Providing timely feedback. If part of your role is providing feedback, be clear with students about when they're going to receive feedback on assignments and assessments. Identify the tools that the instructor has intended to use and the extent to which you will interact with those tools. If you're providing feedback on assignments, assessments, or discussions, be clear about how long it will take to provide that feedback. In terms of email communications, a best practice is to reply within 24 to 48 hours, and feedback on assignments and assessments should be within a week or less. You also want to create opportunities for students to work together and create a feeling and a sense of community. So encouraging students to introduce themselves is a great way to begin this process. And this may be done in a discussion forum, or it might be done during a synchronous session in Zoom. Where appropriate, you can consider group projects or smaller group assignments to help foster student relationships. This might include encouraging students to create study groups and helping facilitate some study groups for students as well. Okay, so throughout this session, we're going to switch back and forth between a general presentation of concepts and topics, and then into some basic how-tos for use in Sakai. So these will not be extremely in-depth trainings on Sakai, but I at least want you to have a basic understanding of where you should access different items within Sakai. So first off, I'm going to switch screens here. If you haven't already been logging into Sakai, which I'm sure you have, you're going to want to make sure that you are sure how to access it and that you have all of the items that you need for the particular course you're going to be supporting. So if you haven't logged in, you can access the Sakai website from the Loyola University page. So I will pull that up. In the links section on the home page, you will have a drop down, and the second one is going to take you to Sakai. And this is where you'll use your UVid to log into Sakai. Once you've logged in on Sakai, this red bar at the top is going to show you courses that you've added to your favorites. So depending on how often you have been a TA in a course, you may have some old things hanging up here and you might want to clean those up. The easiest way to do that is within Sites. You'll see all of the courses you have access to listed. Anything that you want to add or remove from your list at the top can be added by clicking on the star. Once you've added all of the sites that you want, you will notice there will be a little reload to see your favorites, and the new course that you've added will be added up to the top. Same thing, if you unstar any item, it will be removed from that list at the top. And there are, an entire list. You can go back and forth and switch between whichever items that you need to have up here based on the courses that you are participating in. So once you have accessed that and you have provided or set up your list of courses, one of the things that you may be asked to do, and forgive me, I have multiple windows on the same page here. You may be asked in a course to create groups. So I wanted to show you how you would access that. As a teaching assistant, when you go into Site Info in the left tool menu, you will have a restricted access to some of these items, but one that you will have access to would be Manage Groups. So if an instructor is choosing to utilize groups within their course for students to be able to join, whether it's for study groups or projects, this is where you can create a new group. This would allow you to create as many groups as you need and move students into those groups. You'll notice there's also a new joinable set. So one use for this, if you want to create study groups, or if a course is going to use, say, a project group based on topics, you could create the joinable groups based on topic, and then students can self-select which group they would like to join. So I could say that I'm going to have one that's on environmental regulations. Okay, and I can say how many people are going to be in that group. So maybe I want no more than 6. I want, let's say, 10 groups, and I want no more than 6 people in a group. So once that group is hit 6, it'll be capped and no one else can join that group. I can let people see who is in the class or in the group before they join. I can allow them to see other members of the group after joining, and I can also allow them to unjoin the group. And those are going to be set based on your needs for the course. So here's my set. It'll create those. So now I have 10 groups, and students, if I change views, when they come in to access this, they will see groups that you can join, and they can click on the join button to become part of that group. So this is a really nice way to let students self-select study groups and have a space for them to interact with online. And as I said, also a nice way to create project groups, whether they are assigned or self-selected. All right. So we are going to move on and talk a bit about, make sure that my computer is on the right spot. Okay, here we go. So from here, we are going to talk a bit about expectations and schedule. The biggest thing here is making sure that you are familiar with and reinforcing the course expectations, processes, and procedures that are outlined in the instructor's syllabus. In terms of expectations, deadlines, and guidelines, you want to make sure that you've read the syllabus and that you understand the expectations and policies of the professor. Additionally, you would like to meet with the professor to discuss their expectations for you and your role in the course. To support students throughout the course, it's important to know and support the expectations and policies of that particular course. If you're evaluating participation or performance, be sure you understand the criteria by which students are being evaluated. Be aware of things such as due dates for assignments, exams, and projects. Encourage students to plan ahead, offer check-ins for projects, or even study sessions for exams as appropriate. If you are assigning work or facilitating synchronous sessions during the course, be sure that you provide at least a week's notice for any changes in schedule or assignments. You also want to ensure that you know what tools are being used for communication and encourage students to use them to engage with the instructor as well as you and each other. And each faculty member is different. Some want to use an external email address, some want their LUC email, some are using email within Sakai, others might use messages or announcements. So there are a variety of tools, and it's important to be clear what is being used and what the expectation is for its use. In terms of policies, most professors include policies regarding things such as privacy, intellectual property, academic honesty, online class etiquette, sync session recording guidelines, and other relevant policies in their syllabus. You want to ensure that you know and are able to provide student support regarding these policies. If you're going to be facilitating synchronous Zoom sessions, be sure to read the university guidelines for recording students. That will outline for you the expectations of how those recordings are used. And generally, it is the recording can't be shared outside of the course that it was recorded for without written permission from every student whose voice, name, or image was shown in the recording. Okay, so just something to keep in mind if you happen to facilitate and record synchronous sessions in Zoom. Academic integrity. So this is an area of concern in a lot of online courses. In a face-to-face course, we are in the presence of our students and we can leverage that proximity to discourage academic dishonesty. In an online course, this can be a bit more challenging. So before we look at how best to promote academic integrity, it's important to note that there's no one way to guarantee students will uphold academic integrity. So we recommend layering of strategies to better ensure academic integrity. When we look at academic integrity, we generally take a three-prong approach. So we look at assessments and assignments, technology solutions, and then a community of integrity. So first we'll look at assignments and assessment design. Some basic strategies that promote academic integrity include things like not reusing the same test from term to term. So if you're working with a faculty member, they may have an old test that they've used before. They might ask you to help them develop some additional questions or additional versions of the test, because we have been really promoting this idea of not utilizing the same test term to term, especially in an online environment, because people can easily become familiar with the questions that are in that assessment. So we strongly encourage the development of question pools, which is a feature within Sakai that we will take a brief look at. So this means taking an initial test and adding some new questions to it. It might be as simple as adding 5 new questions, which creates a larger pool of overall questions that the test can be created from. When creating these test pools, it allows you to create, say, a bank of 30 different questions and give each student 15 random questions from that pool. So that helps to reduce the duplicate tests, and it provides a more secure testing situation. Another strategy we recommend and encourage is avoiding Googleable questions. If something can quickly be typed into Google and immediately return a response, this is an appealing option for a student who isn't as prepared as they should be. So we encourage faculty and we encourage you to think about questions that ask students to engage in higher order thinking. And this is what we call, this is what we call, we're talking about from Bloom's taxonomy. So this is, if you are in education at all, it's the idea that we are starting with some basic level of identify, define, describe, but then we want to move up to some higher thinking where students are being asked to apply and create and synthesize and analyze information. So we want to think about varying levels of questions that are going to ask students to really think about the information that they are presented with and synthesize that into meaning for themselves and make connections between the current course, its materials, and other courses they've taken. So this strategy of higher order thinking is a great approach for assignments also. So instead of having students do something such as summarize a reading, you can ask them to compare and contrast different concepts in the course or different readings on the same topic. This is going to require students to synthesize information from the course in order to complete that assignment. Additionally, projects that require students to apply their knowledge and their skills that they're developing in class are going to promote better academic integrity than those lower level activities such as describing and explaining. These lower level activities are common and easily pulled from the internet. So we encourage you to avoid those types of tasks and ask students to really think at a higher level and apply their understanding. And this is going to help increase academic integrity and maintain the high rigor of a course. A second approach to academic integrity is technology solutions. Again, they're not foolproof, but they are available to help discourage academic dishonesty. So we will look at some of these that are built into Sakai, and this includes tests and quizzes. So within that, you have options to randomize the order that questions appear in exams. You can also randomize answers for each question. So if you are building a test, you can help increase the randomness of every test by selecting random question order and random answer order. Just be sure if you have any none or all of the above questions, you're not randomizing those answers. Showing one question at a time, or using what Sakai calls the linear test approach, is going to help reduce academic dishonesty as well. This is going to prevent students from skipping a question and going back to it later. So they can't take a screenshot, send it off, move on, and then go back to that question. They have to answer the question when it's presented to them, because once they leave, they can't access that question again. So it's automatically a 0. Another approach is setting a time limit for exams. And there are a variety of ways that these can be configured, but setting a time limit ensures that once students start an exam, they have a limited amount of time to complete it. Important to check with the instructor to see if this is a technique that they want to use. This can be stressful for some students, but if there are things like quick check-in quizzes, you might want them to be timed so that people can quickly go through. They either know the answer or they don't know the answer. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, the idea of question pools. This is going to create those unique exams so that each student within the course is going to have almost a completely individualized exam. It's all going to depend on the number of questions that are in a pool. And then lastly, in terms of feedback, we always encourage feedback to be delayed. So feedback doesn't go out to students on quizzes and tests until after they have actually all completed a quiz or test. So if an exam happens to be open for a 24-hour window, instead of students receiving immediate feedback, the feedback might come, say, 2 days after the exam closes to ensure that everyone has completed it and that any manual feedback that needs to be provided has been entered into the exam. Another technology option that you may encounter is Turnitin. Turnitin is going to work with the assignments tool. This service references submitted papers with a database of papers as well as internet sources to determine if a paper may have been plagiarized. There's a report that goes along with this and that can be shared with students. And that report outlines items that are potentially questionable and need to be reviewed prior to grading the paper to determine if the information contains plagiarized components. For exams, we currently have the Respondus lockdown browser, but IT is also rolling out another new resource. It should be out in the next week or so. So you might see Respondus browser, and then there will be another one. I'm forgetting the name, so I will look that up for you. So faculty will have access to either of these kind of secure testing platforms that are going to restrict students into a browser window so that they can't open up other tabs or other windows. It'll also prevent them from doing a variety of things such as taking screenshots. The newer service also will allow faculty to request ID recognition. So for high stakes exams, students would actually have to show their ID to the camera to be verified in order to begin their actual exam. So these are software that will require setup. So if you encounter a course that's going to utilize these software options, it's important to make sure that you have walked through any of the tech tutorials and support resources so that you can refer students to the resources they may need in order to actually participate in the exam. So for example, with Respondus, it is a piece of software students have to download and install on their computer before they can take an exam. If they don't have it, they'll be prompted to do so. Once they have it installed, then they will be able to take the exam. And then lastly, you might encounter, this is less likely, but you might encounter a situation where an instructor is using Examity. This is a paid proctoring service. It requires some extensive setup, some training for the instructor in terms of setup. And if you happen to be participating in the setup, you would need to go through that training as well. This does require an entire approval process. So the instructor would need to have gotten prior approval before that process can even start. And that approval deadline was August 1st. So if you happen to come across any faculty who is using Examity, make sure that you have sufficient training if you're going to be asked to support any of that. And then lastly, we would strongly encourage building a community of integrity within a course. What we see is that students don't often know what academic integrity means or looks like within a course or their chosen field. And they don't always recognize the impact that academic dishonesty can have on their learning, their understanding, and ultimately their career. By providing students with example learning opportunities and guidelines, you can begin to build a respect for academic integrity. So this can happen through identifying areas of concern and having conversations. It might include providing readings or activities in a course that are focused specifically on academic integrity within a particular discipline. It might include some type of a quiz or a discussion post that talks about what is academic integrity and how do we uphold and maintain that. And this will typically be organized by the instructor, but it's good for you to be aware of what they are saying and what they are encouraging, and have some resources available on how students can maintain academic integrity and what that looks like in the field that they are studying. And then another way to encourage the community of integrity is ensuring students know where to go for support. And this is where you can be especially helpful to students. So often things like plagiarism and cheating happen when students are stressed, overwhelmed, or they aren't understanding the material. So you might be working with a small group of students and you can help support them through the course material. Or you might refer them to the tutoring center or the writing center if they're struggling in writing their particular papers. They need support and they need skills. By knowing where to send them, by knowing that students have support, they're going to feel more confident in their work and they're going to be less stressed. So we encourage the use of a combination of these tools and these strategies so that we can educate students on academic integrity and reduce opportunities to engage in academic dishonesty. Okay, so schedules and organization. In online course space, as I mentioned, instructors can choose to hold synchronous, asynchronous, or optional synchronous sessions for students. Those synchronous sessions are in Zoom, everyone again, same place and same time. Asynchronous, students have a given time frame to complete activities and they're responsible for doing that over the course of that time. And then optional synchronous sessions may be ones where, like this, whoever can attend is here live and can engage and interact. Anyone who is unable to attend can review a recording and follow up on the information. There may be an activity or a discussion that they have to complete after reviewing the video. So if the course that you are working with has a scheduled meeting time, you want to think about, especially if you're facilitating these sessions, active learning, and consider keeping synchronous sessions under 2 hours, even less if you can, in order to maintain attention and engagement. If a course doesn't have a scheduled course time, then it might be completely asynchronous. If you are in an asynchronous course, there may be occasional synchronous sessions that are, again, those optional ones. This can be beneficial to students to help them build community and also to engage with you and with the instructor. So if you have an unscheduled synchronous time, you do want to make sure that you are planning ahead and making that optional, since students wouldn't have planned for a set time to participate in the course. In online courses, students often work through all their learning material on their own, or much of it on their own, which is going to take longer than participating in a lecturing class or a discussion. So in order to maximize any face-to-face synchronous time, we recommend a flipped model where students would watch lectures and read materials before a synchronous session, and that leaves your sync time open for active discussion, case studies, practice problems, small group work, and time to interact with you. To help you and your students stay on track and on top of coursework, it's important to create a consistent schedule. So you want to orient yourself to the schedule established by the instructor. When working or communicating with students, make sure to reinforce those deadlines. Each instructor's schedule will vary based on the course in the way that works best for the format that they have established, whether that is a synchronous or an asynchronous format. So setting a weekly structure and a schedule is going to keep everyone focused and progressing through the course. That regular schedule assists you and your students with time management. Students know what to do and when, and they can plan their time. And for you, the set due dates lets you plan when to work on managing the course, grading, giving feedback, those types of activities that you might be asked to engage in. Okay, we'll take a brief break before we get into assessments and assignments and see if there are any questions.
So I did have a question that came in from early on back in the Sakai section about how students actually access that group, the group setup page.
Sure, so they actually access it the same way. I will switch to that screen just so you can see. So once the student logs into the course and they access their course, they'll show up on one of the pages depending on where they are. But students will actually access that group through Site Info also. So when they click Site Info, they won't see all of the same options. So I'm logged in, I'm looking at it as a student right now. So when I click Site Info, this is all I will see. I will see groups that I'm already a member of, and I will see groups that I can join. Okay, so they access it the same way that you would, they just have a limited access to the information.
Along those same lines, you mentioned what you see versus what the students see. Is there a way to toggle between student view and the instructor view or the teaching assistant's view?
Sure, so up at the very top of your Sakai screen, you'll have your user profile, your sites button, and then this little box here that'll say Enter Access View. It gives you a general idea of what students will see. There are going to be a few small areas that it won't necessarily give you the exact same view, but it gives you a pretty good sense of what students will see. And it's really helpful if you have materials or assignments that haven't been released yet. You'll see that students will not be able to view them when you switch into Access View. So you can see right now, logged in as me as an instructor, I have full edit options to the site info page. I can add participants, I can manage my groups and manage all of the settings for the site. But as soon as I enter access view, I'm viewing it as a student. And now this is what I'm restricted to. So I can only see these 2 items.
Great, thank you. So if anyone has any questions for Brianna at this point, if you want to send them to me through the private message in the chat function, I can help ask those questions. I do have a question. I don't know if this is something that you can help us with, but Microsoft Office Teams as a tool, is that something that teaching assistants will have access to use, maybe to moderate discussions or work between their classes, their students?
So everyone with a Loyola account has an Office 365 account, which does give you access to Teams. So you would be able to create a group, create your own team, and add students to that. Definitely check with instructors and see. I know there are a handful that I've come across that are using it, but a number are not utilizing it as a tool. So definitely, check in and see if that's something that's a regular part of the course. If not, it is definitely something that you would have, you should have some login access to and be able to create a different group of people to chat with. It's obviously not going to sync directly with a Sakai course, so you're going to have to go in and kind of set those up and add people to them.
Okay, and is that something where they can have access to the assessment feature as well if they are graduate students, either as teaching assistants or as instructors of record?
The assessment features within Sakai?
I think within Teams. At least that's what the question's in.
So, okay. So yeah, within Teams, once you create a team, you would have full access. You should have, as a user in the Loyola community, full access to things like assignments and calendars and file sharing. So if you're using Teams that way and you create a team for the course you're working with, you should be able to access all of those resources. Do know, though, that ITS provides very limited support for some of those details, so you might be best off, if you need to learn some of those, searching in Who Knew It, which we have a subscription service to, and they have some good videos and resources that would help you utilize Teams for a class.
Okay, and we're going to cover, are you going to cover grading processes later in the discussion? I feel like that was.
Yep, we will definitely talk about grading and feedback as we get later into the session.
Fantastic. So then I think we can move on from there then. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Get back to all of the things. Okay. So we are actually going to move on to assessments and assignments right now. So when we are thinking about assessments and assignments, we definitely want to think about some of the higher level things, but we're also going to look specifically at some of the tools that are available to you within the assignments and the tests and quizzes tools within Sakai. So we're going to take a few minutes and go through creating an assignment and also creating tests and quizzes so that you'll have a sense of how to work through this process in case this is something that you are asked to complete. So I will switch out here. Okay, so in terms of assignments, the assignment tool on the left-hand side is going to provide you the opportunity to create assignments. This is also where grading of assignments can take place. So we'll walk through the creation of assignment first and look at some of the options that are available within that. And then as we go through, we will talk about how you would actually go in and grade assignments. So within the assignments tool, we would want to click on Add to add new assignments. There will be certain materials that are required, other materials that are optional, and you can provide as much or as little detail as you have depending on what the assignment is. So let's say, so we're going to do a paper review, and here I would include the instructions for the assignment. We encourage very clear, detailed instructions, including things such as submission file formats or length of words, whatever parameters that you would like to see in an assignment. File type is often really important. We know that a lot of students have Google accounts, but as a university, we aren't on Google. So the submission process is going to be a little different. If you want, say, an essay submitted and you want to actually be able to provide inline comments, that needs to come to you as a Word document. It can be done in a PDF. It's just going to take a little more work to be able to provide feedback that way. So here you would put in a complete description of what the assignment is and any parameters for it. You can include attachments here. So attachments might include, for example, a faculty member I'm working with, she has several questions that she wants students to answer as a group. So she's created a template document. It's going to be an attachment. Students will download it, edit their group copy, and then submit it. This might also include a rubric. If the assignment has a grading rubric, say for an essay, that could be attached so that students can reference that as they're going through and providing, completing that assignment. Then you want to look at availability. The availability, the open date, is when students can see and save and submit this assignment. So I'm going to set an assignment for the first week of class. I can adjust the time that they can see it. So I'll set that for in the morning. You will notice that the time is by 5-minute increments. I cannot go to 8:59. So if you have an instructor who wants things submitted by 11:59 p.m., 11:55 is as close as we can get you, or they have to go to 12 a.m. the next day. So just keep that in mind. The next option is the due date. So this is the date that the assignment should be turned in. So I'm going to say that students have until Sunday, the 30th, to submit this assignment. Again, I will give them until 11:55 to complete that. The accept until date. So this allows students to submit the assignment after the due date. We recommend including an accept until date for a couple of different reasons. First, even if the assignment won't be graded, if they submit it late, it will be marked as late. So you will know that they did do it, that it isn't going to get graded. It's obvious that it was submitted late. But the other reason that we encourage an accept until date, and even a long one, is in case a student has some kind of extenuating circumstance that they can't complete an assignment and they need an extension. So whether it's they become ill or there's someone in their family, some situation that prevents them from completing it. If there is no accept until date, if the accept until date is the same as the due date, that student cannot submit that assignment in Sakai. They have to submit it via email or some other way. So for ease of grading, we encourage accept until dates. I've also used accept until dates in case a student submits an assignment and it's completely off base, and I want to give them the opportunity to do that assignment again. I can allow them to resubmit that, but if my accept until date is the same as the due date, again, they can't resubmit that assignment. So we always encourage some extension, some extra time that students can submit things until. I personally go to the end of a course just in case there's any extenuating circumstances. Then you have some options in terms of how students are aware of this. You could hide the due date. I don't encourage that. You can add it to the calendar. So if the course you're working in is using the calendar, adding it to the calendar provides a nice way for students to keep track of everything they have coming up, because when they log into Sakai, they'll get an overview of their calendar for the week, and it will tell them what events and what due dates are coming up. You can also add an announcement about the open date for the assignment, which goes out through the announcements tool. Now, if you're creating all of the assignments in bulk, or if you're creating several assignments at once, sending out an announcement for an assignment that doesn't open for another week isn't really useful. You'll have some students panicking because they see there's supposed to be an assignment because they didn't actually read all the content. So they'll panic because they see an assignment is posted, but they can't actually find it. So I don't really encourage that option either. I personally like a calendar if that's being utilized. In terms of access, some faculty may have groups of students. So whether it was, say, a topic group, or perhaps students who need accommodations, extended time on assignments, you could choose to make this assignment available to everyone in the site or only to specific groups that have been set up already. So you'll notice if I say specific groups, it shows me all the groups that are available, and I could say which group I want to actually see this assignment. In terms of submission type, we strongly recommend inline and attachment. So what this means is students will have a box that they can type in some text, as well as a place to upload an attachment. And depending on the kind of assignment, most of the time it would just be an attachment, but every once in a while, students might want to add a little note, and that inline piece can be a great place for them to do that instead of having to send a separate email. You can allow resubmissions. So this would allow students to upload it, change their mind, resubmit something else. In terms of notifications, again, you can choose, this is notifications for the instructors. So sending an email every time somebody submits, only notifying email for, so don't send any, send for everything, or send a summary a day. Personally, I don't like to get the emails every time somebody submits, or even a daily submission. I know that I've scheduled a time to go in and review assignments, so I'll just look at that point in time and see who has and hasn't turned it in. We mentioned Turnitin earlier. This is where you would enable Turnitin. So if I select Use Turnitin, you'll see there are a variety of options here, including allow students to review the report. We encourage letting students review the report. This is a great learning tool for them, especially in lower level courses, so they can see items that are marked as questionable and get an idea of where they need to be more specific in how they're utilizing information from different sources or how they're citing it. Although sometimes if a citation happens to be a direct copy of another citation, it might get flagged. So certain things aren't going to be extremely useful, but other things are going to be helpful for students. You'll notice that when using Turnitin, there are very specific file formats. And this is where I said in directions, saying specific formats is really important. If you're utilizing Turnitin, these are the file formats that Turnitin can review. So you would want to ensure that students are only submitting those types of assignments. One option is to simply copy this and paste it into the directions to make sure that students know exactly what file types they can upload. Submitting to repositories. So you could submit the papers that the students are turning into the standard repository, which is typical. And then generate originality report. These can be immediately or on a particular due date. This is the report that comes back, identifying any potentially questionable item. Then there are exclusion options. So bibliographic material often gets flagged, so you can exclude that. Quoted materials from the similarity index. You can exclude small matches. And this is going to be, again, hit and miss. So sometimes leaving that open and then just kind of glancing at those is more helpful. And then you want to check it against all of these general items in most cases. So it's going to go against the original repository to see if any other student has submitted the same or a very similar assignment, current and archived internet resources, as well as periodicals, journals, and publications. From there, you can set up grading scales. So whatever the grading scale is set up for as the master part of the class, that information will be available to you, and you can set what the grade is going to be for the assignment. If it's letter grade or if it's points. If it's points, you'll set the maximum points possible. And then here you can choose to add this to the gradebook. This is encouraged so that once you grade this assignment within the assignment tool, it will go directly to the gradebook. You don't have to, again, manually enter in those grades separately. In terms of release notification, so this is a notification for students, whether or not they get one when their grade is released. And it can be sending none or sending one when it is released. Then you have a few other additional options, and these are important to note because some faculty may use them. You might utilize peer assessment. This is going to allow a student to submit the paper, and then a peer or how many ever peers you identify are going to provide some feedback on that paper. So this might be great in a writing course where you want students to get some peer editing and feedback before they are submitting a final paper. Those can be anonymous evaluations, and you can see the reviews of their submissions, allow them to. And then you can say how many submissions each student must review. So maybe you want everyone to review 2 other classmates. And then you can put the details of what students would be looking for in terms of the review and what criteria they would be utilizing for that peer submission. Okay. The other option might be group submission. So if you have students working on a group project, setting up the assignment as a group submission allows one person from the group to submit. And then when you grade that, all the other members of the group get assigned that same grade, assuming it is an assignment where it's 1 grade for everyone in the group. Some additional features include things like supplemental, in the supplemental items, model answers. So you might have a model or an example that you want students to emulate. You might want to allow private notes. And then there's an all-purpose space that they can utilize. So once you've set up this information, I'm going to say no additional options, you can go in and post this assignment. And obviously let me just switch this. Once I have posted that, it's going to get added to my list of assignments. So now here it shows up, paper review. This little red ribbon indicates that it's a Turnitin assignment. So this particular item is going to run through Turnitin and students will be able to see that. Okay. And then from this assignment list, this is where I can see all of the assignments that are currently scheduled. I can see when they open, when they are due. When students start submitting them, I can see how many are new and how many are turned in. I can also view the point scale, and I can remove any assignments that I do not want. You'll notice that under actual assignments, I can go in and edit them. I can duplicate them. It does not transfer the settings, so you do have to go in and double check those. And I can also grade them from here. We'll look at this a little bit more as we go through in the grading and feedback section. So from here, we'll take a look at quizzes and tests. Quizzes and tests are created in the assessment builder. For this, we need a title. And then we're going to select this assignment builder to create this quiz or test. There is an option to use markup text. So this is a specific text-based formatting style that if you format in a text-based document, not a Word document, so just in a regular text editor, you can create all of the questions, key them to the right answers and various items. Following a very specific structure, you could actually upload all the questions rather than copying and pasting or typing them out. But this takes a little time to get used to and adjust it to. If you're great with markup text already, definitely you can take a Word document, turn it into markup text, and upload that more quickly than copying and pasting. But for our purposes, the basic way to do it is creating using the assessment builder. So this is going to be your basic structure for the quiz. Quizzes can be in parts. So I might have multiple choice, fill in the blank, and short answer, and I can make a part for each one. I can add parts up here. I can preview, I can print, and I can also adjust the settings. In terms of questions, you'll see there are a variety of different questions that students can complete. So they can be fill in the blank, they can be matching, multiple choice, surveys, anything that you would like, including copying from a pool. So I'm going to start with creating a question, and then I'll show you how we can copy from a pool. So I'll choose a multiple choice. Once I select the type of question, I again have a variety of options to complete for that question. So first off, point value, we'll say it's worth 1 point. I can choose to display that or not. In terms of multiple choice, I could have one correct answer, I could have multiple correct answers and they only have to select one, or multiple correct and they need to select multiple options. You'll notice under single correct, it says points deducted for incorrect answer. So this means they would actually lose points. If you had a 10-question quiz and someone hadn't studied at all, they could potentially get a -10 on the assessment. So we generally discourage the use of deducting points unless there's a very specific purpose that you would be utilizing that for. The simplest way is typing text directly into the question box, but some questions may need some additional formatting. So you'll see that there is a show all rich text editors option. This is going to provide you with a full text editor to create some more sophisticated questions. So those questions might have some formatting. It might include an image. Chemistry classes often have a screenshot of molecules and things, and you have to identify based off of those images. So this would be how you would add that type of information. So, excellent typing today. So you would go in and type in each question. Once you have entered the question, again, if there are any attachments related to it, you could add those here. Then you'll go in and add the answers. Okay, and then you select the correct answer. If you need more than 4 answers, you can add up to 6 additional answers. And here's where you can randomize the answers. So I will go ahead and choose to do that. In some questions, you might want rationale. So it might be a multiple choice, but you want them to explain why they chose a particular selection. So you can enable that here. And this is where we can assign to a part. So if I have different parts, say for the multiple choice, the fill in the blank and short answer, I could choose the part that it's assigned to. Obviously, the default is just one part. While I'm building this question, I can also assign it to a pool. So I can add it to a pool of questions that I already have built. So we'll talk about pools in a moment, but I'll go ahead and assign it to this miscellaneous pool. For each question, feedback can be provided in here. This isn't utilized frequently, but if someone would like, they can go in and say, if you chose the correct answer, yes, that's correct, here's why, or no, this is incorrect, here's why, or no, this is incorrect, look at this resource to understand why it's incorrect. Once you've added the question and chosen the option, you can go ahead and save. So now here our question will show up. This is how we'll see it. It'll show the question, the options, and the answer key. And from here, I can continue to add additional questions. I can also add questions from a question pool. In order to do that, I'm going to choose that copy from question pool option at the bottom. So again, those question pools are groups of questions that have been set up ahead of time that can be pulled from. So I have a multiple choice pool here. I'm going to select this pool. There are 30 questions available in here, and I can choose one from here. So what I'm doing now is adding individual questions from the pool rather than creating a randomized test. I'll show you the randomized version in just a moment. So now it's adding that specific question from that pool. If I want to create an entirely randomized test, I would either start that from the beginning or I would add a new part. So I'm going to add a new part, and this will be our multiple choice. Here I can say questions authored are going to be one-to-one. So that's me creating them, or I can say random draw from a pool. This is going to allow me to create a random set. So I'm going to draw 10 questions, and I am going to choose my miscellaneous, my multiple choice test pool. So from the 30 questions, each student will get 10 random questions. Students' questions are randomized each time an assessment is submitted. This is only needing to be changed if you are allowing students to submit more than once. So if they're taking it as kind of a self-check and you want them to keep working toward the right answer, you might keep the questions in the same random order for all the submissions, or every single time they get a completely different random selection of the question. In terms of scoring, all of your points have to be the same for those questions. So again, 1, this is your deducting, remember, providing them negative points. And then once that's created, I can save. Now, when you create question pools or quizzes based on question pools, all you're going to see is this bit of text. You won't see the questions because they're a random set, okay? So you'll see any specific questions you added listed, but any pools will tell you that it's created from a pool. Once your quiz has been created, this is where you can go into the settings. And again, same types of settings with the assignments. Here we want to go in, we want to set the due dates, when it's available, how long they have to take it. I and my office, we're big proponents of 24-hour windows so that students can start it at any point in that 24-hour time, but then we'll set them up with a, we'll set them up with a time limit. So they have a certain amount of time to complete the actual assessment. So I'll change this so that it's available at midnight. So they have 24 hours, and then we can say they'll have a time limit of an hour. Again, late submissions, allowed or not allowed. If they are, you have to set a date that's past the actual due date. So I will give them until the following night. Again, it'll be marked late. Notifications, do I want them? Do I not? How do I want them? Do I want points to show? Again, up to students. Up to you whether you want students to see the points as they go through and take the quiz. If you happen to be working on a quiz that is going to use Respondus, this is where you're going to add Respondus. So it's not obvious. It's this little box, ensure students take exam from specific location. This will allow me to require the lockdown browser. And this is where I would enable that for students. Under exceptions, this is where I can set up any exceptions for a student who might need extended time, who might have an extra hour or 2 hours to take an assessment. And I would be able to choose specific users, or if I have groups set up for exceptions, I could choose a particular group. Again, setting the time that's available, how long they have, when they can submit it by. Grading and feedback. Generally, they're taking it once, so highest score. You do not want to do anonymous grading. If you hide the identity from the grader, actually I take that back. You won't see it as you grade it. It will show up eventually in the correct place in the assessment, but you won't know who to go back if you have any questions. So just use that sparingly, think through it before you select it. Again, recommending sending assessment scores to the gradebook so that students will get that score once they have completed that assessment. And here's where you can choose the feedback. If you remember in those questions, I could say if you got it correct or incorrect, and I could provide feedback. If I have levels, I can do that. I could do both. Generally, we leave it at question level feedback. In terms of types, none, immediate, on submission, or displayed on a specific date. So this is what we recommend, choosing a date that is some point after the time that you would give yourself to grade and review all the assessments, even if it's auto-graded, just giving it a little extra time in case anybody is taking it late. So I had this due on the 28th, so I will set feedback to be available at 11:55 on Saturday. And then here's where you would set what feedback students would actually see. So they could see their own responses and correct responses. This is that question or section level feedback, so part feedback versus question feedback. Any comments that you might have, you can set their assessment score. They won't see their score if you don't select this option. So it's important if you want to provide them feedback this way that you are including that assessment score. Then the last section is layout and appearance. You have two ways that students can navigate assignments or assessments. They can randomly access the questions through a table of contents. So it just provides them with a little drop-down icon. They can switch between the questions and go back and forth. Most commonly, faculty prefer linear access. So that's where students see one question on the page at a time. And once they answer it, they can't go back and access that question again. If you have different parts, you can choose how you want those numbered, 1 through 50, or section 1 is 1 through 10, and section 2 is 1 through 10. Then background color, the rest of these you wouldn't need to enable. So at this point, you can save it, or you can save settings and publish. Once you publish this, you should not go back in and edit the test. So you should save it until you know that the test is ready to go and there's nothing else that needs to be changed. If there are any adjustments, you want to make those. Once it's completely ready, you know that it's done, then you can do save settings and publish. So now we're going to see two different tabs. So first off, we can send notifications. Again, if you're creating these ahead of time, you don't want to send a notification, you'll have panicking students. So we generally say without notification. I do like to display them on the calendar so they know that that's coming up. if you set notifications, this would be the sample text that's there. I'm going to go ahead and publish. Right, once it publishes, now you'll see I have working copies and I have published. These are released to students. You'll see under release date that this isn't available until the 28th. So if I went into student view, into quizzes and tests, I won't see that assessment, that sample quiz, because it's not available to me, okay? So students will not see that published test until this date occurs, and once it's past that date, they won't have editing access to that. You'll also notice, because I chose Respondus Lockdown Browser, it tells me that this assessment needs that browser. So that's another notification to students that they have to have that ready to go in order to be able to complete this quiz. Okay, so tests and quizzes have a lot of information. I would strongly encourage you to look through the Sakai help documentation if you're asked to create tests and quizzes. They have really great step-throughs on how to do all of these items and kind of covers through this information. And I realized one of the things I forgot to show you is the question pools. My recommendation to faculty is to create all of their tests as question pools. The reason being, even if they don't add new questions, say they only add 10 questions, by creating it in a pool, that's how you randomly assign the question order. Otherwise, the questions are going to show up pretty much in the same order. So creating a pool is a matter of choosing Add New Pool. Once you've chosen that, giving it a name. And then you can save it. There's nothing else that needs to be added. Once you've created the pool, I can select it. And now it's going to become like creating a quiz like we did earlier. I select Add Question. And then here's our normal, choose my question type. Once I have chosen my question type, it's going to show me that same type of editing space, and I would complete this for each question in the pool. Okay. I will go ahead and exit out of here. All right. Any immediate questions on assignments and tests and quizzes tool? I know there's a lot in that chunk.
We did have a question, and I don't know if it falls here or, yeah, I think it probably does. We had a question around using technology so that you can show yourself working through a problem for students. So something like on a tablet or on a computer, where maybe if you're writing down how you work through like a chemistry or a math problem, is there a way to do that in these systems?
Sure. So we're going to talk about Zoom, and I'm realizing, you know, I'm obviously way off on my timing here. We are going to talk about Zoom and Panopto, and so I'll explain both of the options that are available within Zoom and Panopto to do that. Both tools do have a mobile option, so if you happen to have a mobile device, you could install Zoom or Panopto on them and use those annotation tools that are built in to do things like write out a chemistry problem or write out a math problem and explain yourself solving that. And that's an excellent resource for students. It's also an excellent assignment and assessment for students. So when we get to those two tools, we'll talk a little bit more about how those can be done.
Great. I had another question, whether or not there's a way to track whether students are on track versus off, or on task versus off task in the classroom.
In a synchronous session?
I think it must be.
So the general answer is no. There isn't some tool that's watching the students to see if they're on task or off task. And depending on the size of the class, it's not really going to be feasible for you to see everybody's face at the same time. And we also don't encourage required camera, especially, there can be technical issues that prevent that. If someone is having a hard time with their internet connection, having video running makes that even worse. Privacy concerns, a variety of things. So generally what you would want to do is just ensure that the activities you're having students do in a synchronous session actually require them to participate. We really discourage lecturing in synchronous sessions. This is informative for you, but it isn't fun. It's not incredibly engaging because you're receiving information and it's easy to be distracted by other things going on in your house or other thoughts that you have, other things you could be doing with your time. So there really aren't tools, it's more strategies to ensure that you're providing opportunities for students to do active work when you're in a synchronous session.
Okay, great, thank you. And that's all the questions we have right this moment. Okay,
all right, so then I will move on here. So grading and feedback, I should have just stayed where we were. So we'll take a quick look at how you're going to give feedback within those two tools that we were just looking at. But some points to keep in mind is making sure that if you're providing feedback, that it's regular, that it's timely. So feedback on an assessment or an assignment a week or two after they've completed it isn't especially useful, especially if that information, say, is an assignment that has required material that will be needed for an assessment. If they don't get feedback regularly and frequently, it's not going to help them improve for the assessment. You also want to think about making sure that feedback is clear, it's detailed, it's actionable. So providing students with something more than, this was a really great essay. This is a really great essay because of the way you utilized X, or being very specific about what they did that was done well, and being very specific about areas where they need to improve, and also kind of balancing that. You don't want to overload students with a bunch of negative feedback and not really have any positive feedback to give them. So in terms of the tools, we'll take a look at those in a moment, but much of the grading can take place directly in those tools. So within assignments and then within tests and quizzes. If we set up the grade book with tests and quizzes correctly, any multiple choice fill in the answer, anything where you've already set answers, is automatically going to be added to that grade book. So I will switch back to Sakai and we'll take a quick look at where we're going to grade these items. So we'll start with assignments again. Within assignments, if you remember, I mentioned that in and new option. So when students submit their assignments via the assignment tool, this number is going to adjust and show me who has submitted, show me how many, and how many are new since I started grading. So if I select this option, it would take me to a list of all of the students and show me whether or not they have submitted an assignment. If it's submitted, it'll be marked here. The submission status, if it's not submitted, as you see. If it's late, it'll be marked red, late in parentheses. So it'll be very obvious that the submission was late. To actually grade an assignment, I would want to click on a student's name, and then it's going to provide me with this area where I can set the grade, I can provide comments, and I can add an attachment. So if it was a Word document, I've downloaded that, I've maybe put some inline comments on their essay. I want to reattach that so they can get that back. Here I may put just a general summary comment and explains they need to look at the Word document for more detailed comments. This is where I can again allow a resubmission. So occasionally, completely off the mark assignment, I'll ask a student to resubmit that. And then I can say how many resubmissions and how long they have to resubmit. Once I have graded an individual's assignment, I can either save and not release the information yet, or I can save and release the information immediately. I often say save and don't release so that I can go through and grade everybody's in case I happen to come across maybe a discrepancy or something that I clearly didn't explain well in an assignment, and I need to go back and make some adjustments to scores. It's much easier to do that before I've sent them off to the gradebook and notified students that they have a submission score. And then within here, it allows you to click through each student and go through and grade their different assignments. Again, if this is tied to the gradebook, so I'll go ahead and give this an assignment score and I'll release. That information is automatically now pushed over to the gradebook. I don't have to enter it in again, and we'll look at that in a moment. In terms of tests and quizzes, it's very similar. Looking at published copies, I'll see the number submitted, and when there are active submissions, this will be blue. This would allow me to go in and select this assessment and be able to provide scores for that. And actually, the one thing you won't be able to see, I'm going to pull up a different one so you can take a look here. If I go in, this will work. Published copies. So I can see 85 people submitted. I can come in here, I can see the submissions, I can see who, but here's what I want you to see. I can go by question and I can grade each question individually. So you can see question 1. This is all of the question 1s, and I could read everyone's answer, and I could add any commentary that I needed to or wanted to for that question, and I can quickly go through each question and add any feedback. This is really helpful when you are grading short answer and essay. That way you can just read everyone's short answer essay for each question rather than doing it individually. You can also take a look at the total scores, so you can just see everybody's overall score. And if, say, for example, you had a question that really wasn't phrased well and most students missed it and you want to adjust scores, you can make some adjustments here based on whatever you might need to adjust for, whether it is a matter of you had multiple choice and short answer and you need to add some scores, or you're adjusting because of a poorly phrased question, right? And again, because you would link these into the gradebook from the creation point, that information would automatically be submitted. So if I enter into the gradebook, you'll see that sample quiz is going to be in here. You'll see that facilitation plan going to be in here. There are a variety of things that are going to automatically get populated in, and as I complete them, it's going to automatically update those scores and show students the information I have set up in the gradebook. So the instructor will have set this up to determine what pieces students can and can't see within the actual gradebook. The one item that does not automatically push into a gradebook is going to be forums. You have to set that up in here, but you can also set up random assignments that aren't necessarily through the assignments tool or tests and quizzes by selecting Add Gradebook and titling it. So maybe I have a survey and I want them to take that and get some feedback. Again, I can set the due date, and I can also set whether the item is released to students and whether or not it applies to the final course calculations. What you'll notice, these two items, facilitation plan, sample quiz, are both locked. I cannot edit them here. That is because they were created in the assessment tool and the assignment tool. They tell you that gradebook from assignments. This one will tell you gradebook from tests and quizzes. That is where you have to go to edit those scores. You cannot do it in the gradebook. But this survey, because it was created here, can be edited directly here by entering in scores. Okay. So that's usually the common way for forums is you'll read through the forums, give them a score, and then enter that score directly into the gradebook. All right, so we will move along here and take a look at feedback in Sakai. So again, similar to the types of things that we were looking at, pardon me, we were looking at before here. I'll swap these over. Make sure we're in the right space. When we are thinking about providing feedback, let me skip back over there. It's through those same types of areas where you were allowed to go in and add those comments. When we were looking at the questions within the assessment, I could go in and provide feedback. And then again, within the assignment, I can enter in manual comments within that inline text box. So it allows you to have those different options in order to provide feedback directly to students regarding their assignments and their assessments. So a little bit about learning activities. When we are thinking about learning activities, lectures are often a huge component of a course. So if you are thinking that you'll be presenting some lectures, you're going to be hosting those possibly synchronously, but they can also be recorded and then viewed asynchronously. And again, we would strongly encourage people to record lectures ahead of time, let students watch them before class so that when they come to the actual synchronous time, they're getting your time and attention and expertise. They can ask questions. You can engage them with the material. They are going to have more opportunity to engage with the material, with each other, build those relationships, and deepen their understanding of the material. So we would strongly encourage for lectures, again, recorded. If you are doing it as part of a synchronous section, also recording that for others to watch later on. So we have a couple of tools that you can use to do that. One of them is using Panopto. So if you haven't used Panopto before, there are some training resources out there. Again, highly encourage you to take a look at those and utilize those to learn about Panopto. But some of the things that we can look at briefly in terms of Panopto, the basic setup and structure of how Panopto is going to function. So it is a tool that faculty need to add to their course. Once it's added to the course, a folder is created specifically for that course and is only accessible to people within the course. So everything that I create from here is going to be saved into this Sakai course. I have the ability to create new sessions. This is going to require you to download the Panopto software if you don't already have it. It essentially lets you record locally, but then publish that up to the cloud in this particular folder. You can also upload media. So perhaps you have recorded something on an iPad or maybe with your phone. You can upload those videos here. And we strongly encourage the uploading of any media to be to Panopto because it's cloud-based storage, whereas putting it in your Sakai sites, it's going to eat up the space that's available because those are restricted in how much you can upload. You can also create some more specific events based on what you might need to do, but most people are simply either uploading or creating new sessions. Some basics here. Once you select record, it's going to ask you to open or download Panopto. All right, and I will I will switch screens so that you can see that Panopto. So within Panopto, I can record with my camera. So if I want to record me, it's not going to let me because I'm currently using it for Zoom. But it would show me in there. I can choose my audio wherever I am recording from. If you're recording any media that's playing on your computer, you want this capture computer audio option selected. But you can see my secondary sources would be additional screens if you have them, but more importantly, PowerPoint. So when I select that, Panopto is going to record the PowerPoint that I currently have open. It automatically grabs onto that, and when I go and record, it's going to record the information directly from that actual PowerPoint. So you can see it's on the screen that we just left. And if I advance that PowerPoint, it's going to advance with me and move through those different resources with me. Once I have finished recording, I can name this if I would like. If I don't like it, I can delete it and do the whole thing over, or I can upload it back to Panopto. It's going to upload itself. Okay, once I have uploaded that, I have a messy desktop, so sorry, that's all the switching back and forth. Okay, so once I have uploaded that, I'll go ahead and get this out of the way. You will see if I refresh the page, here it is, that little bit that I have gone in and recorded. I can now adjust settings, so who can see it, who has access to it, all that different information that's available here. I can also do some basic editing. So if I had a stop in the middle somewhere and I want to cut that out, I can do that. Editing is simply a click and drag, and it'll take out those little chunks. It doesn't remove them. You can see it's previewing the cuts. So it's showing me the grayed out pieces, but it'll skip over them as I'm actually looking at my playback. The other important piece you're going to want to be aware of in the editing piece is captions. It is an accessibility requirement that videos have captions. Panopto makes it easier. I can import, so I am able to, and this should provide me actually with an option that says auto capture, but I think my microphone was set differently. So normally you would have an option to be able to auto capture the speech, and then it'll auto caption your video for you. It's about 95% accurate depending on the person speaking, but it would also allow you to go in and make some basic edits to the content that's there. So I'm just seeing if it'll let me back in to do it. Captions, there we go. So it imported what I said. I can go back and play that. If something isn't quite right, I can come in here and I can edit it. Anything that isn't accurate, just make the edits. Once you're finished, apply. It'll take a few minutes to process that, but once that has processed, students would have the ability to go back and review that video with the closed captioning on. So if I refresh, it's going to process and tell me it's still processing. Once that's finished, it's going to create those closed captions, and you'll see the CC has been added. It's going to take a few minutes to process. You'll have to trust me that those closed captions are now going to show up, and students can turn those on or off depending on what their needs are.
Brianna, we have a question concerning Panopto. Are students able to access Panopto to do video presentations as well, or is this something that's only open to sort of the instructors or teaching assistants for the class?
No, it's open to everyone who is part of the course. So if this is added to your course toolbar, sorry, again, too many screens, then what you're going to have is students will actually be able to go in and choose Panopto from the toolbar, and they'll see exactly what we see. They would see the option to download it. They would be uploading to their own My Video folder instead of the course folder. So they would be going to theirs would be My folder, and they would be uploading to the My folder. They can then share that into the course. The alternative way around that as an instructor in a course is adding a folder. And let me refresh this. And it's actually not adding there. Yeah. No, this is not correct. Sorry. It's going to be in settings. It's one of those things I don't do normally. Here it is. So under settings, I'm going to back up and do that again for you. So within the course folder, under settings, you can make an assignment folder. So by creating an assignment folder, it's going to allow students to upload directly to that folder. Otherwise, they can't upload to the course folder. Okay. Any other questions on that? This is really a super crash course on Panopto. It's really the basics. ITRS, they provide more detailed workshops, and they host one-on-one drop-in services that you could drop into and get specific support on how to use these tools. You can also get individual consultations with them to go through and learn about how each of these tools function.
I will drop the link for ITRS into the chat box for folks as well so that they can see that.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So from Panopto, and I apologize, we've gone a little over, but we're getting there. So big things that you may be participating in and working with students on. I'm going to make sure you've got the right screen here. There we go. Okay, so discussions. Obviously, synchronous discussions are what we would encourage, providing students the opportunity to engage with each other and with you and with the instructor. So some strategies for that include things like using breakout rooms. Unfortunately, this isn't something I can directly show you because you can't see my Zoom controls, but I have some resources that I will share with Heather, and she can pass those along to you. And it goes through some step-by-steps of how you would utilize breakout rooms. I encourage you to round up some friends or family and have them join you in a Zoom meeting just to play with it and test it out. It's a great way to learn it and see exactly what your options are. But in terms of those discussions, you also want to think about how you're structuring them. Simply saying, let's discuss a topic or posing a question may not provide you with the type of discussion you want in a synchronous session, because there's always that back and forth of who's talking, who's next, is that person done? So things like the breakout rooms, and then utilizing some strategies such as think, pair, share. So here's our question. I want you to take 2 minutes to think about it. Then I'm going to ask you to pair. I'm going to put you in a breakout room with one other person. You're going to talk through what you both thought about. Then we're going to come back to a group and we're going to share. Doing Socratic seminar, same thing. Setting up that situation and then providing each student the opportunity to provide their feedback and select another student who's going to then go in and provide additional commentary on what they have already shared. Thinking about these different types of discussion approaches, and I'm going to give you a sheet, a resource guide that talks about a variety of different discussion strategies, how you can accomplish them in a synchronous session, as well as how you can accomplish them in an asynchronous session. In terms of your asynchronous discussions, those are typically going to take place in the forums tool. So it's important to make sure that it's clear and detailed as to what students are expected to complete in a forum, whether that's word length or type of citations they might need to include, or if it's just opinion that they are able to provide in a particular discussion. As the facilitator of a discussion, you want to make sure that you are guiding the conversation without dominating it. So we do not encourage responding to every student's post. We encourage you to review forums, ask questions that are going to help further discussions, or provide redirection if you see that a conversation is getting off track or that students aren't understanding concepts. And then again, in terms of the questions you ask, making sure that you're thinking about those higher level thinking questions. Something like summarize the week's readings is going to result in a bunch of posts that are almost identical and not going to be especially effective for students. But asking a question that challenges something that they read is going to have them do some additional thinking. And then they're also going to be supporting with evidence or research to back up their opinions. Okay, so in terms of Zoom, as I said, I can't show you the actual breakout rooms, but I've taken some screenshots here so you can see kind of how they work and how they play out. So when you are a host of a synchronous session, you'll have this more button and breakout rooms will be an option for you. And then you'll be asked, how do you want to assign participants? Automatically or manually? We always encourage automatically. It's just faster and easier to do on the fly. Then you can say how many rooms you want set up, and it will tell you if I set up, what do we have, 77. If I set up 11 rooms, there will be 7 participants in each room. And then I can go ahead and create those. Once those rooms are created, they're all going to show up in a list for you, and you'll see some options. You'll see who's in each breakout room. You'll also have the ability to assign people to specific rooms, so I can move them to another room. The snowball discussion, you start with 2 people in a room, then you add 2 more, and then you add 2 more. So using that move to is the way that you're going to remove students and combine them into a group and make a larger group for a thing like a snowball discussion. You'll notice that I can recreate the groups, I can add a room, and then I have some options. So here are my options in the bottom corner. I can push everybody automatically to their breakouts. I can allow participants to return to the main session at any time or not. I can lock them into their rooms. I can set them to close automatically. So perhaps I want students to have 10 minutes. I can set this to 10 minutes, and after 10 minutes, they close and bring everybody back. I can also use the countdown after closing the breakout rooms. This is generally what we do. I'll often set it so it's at 60 seconds, and I will message everyone in the breakout room and say, you have 1 minute before we close. I'll hit close, and then it gives them a 60-second countdown before it moves them back into the main room. Okay, so this is just an overview of using breakout rooms. Similarly, if you are, when we were talking about recording and annotating things, there is on your Zoom toolbar an annotate button. So that's going to allow me to show a mouse pointer, a selection tool. I can draw various things. So I'll add some things here for you to see. I can highlight and draw different items. I can spotlight specific things. So there are a variety of tools that you can use within the Zoom annotation features that would allow you to do things such as creating, chemistry problems or math problems. I can create text boxes and utilize all of these items, and it's going to record everything that I'm doing as I'm adding those annotations that can be then later watched by students. Okay. Any questions on Zoom? No?
I'm not seeing anything coming in.
All right. Yeah, Zoom, pretty quick. I personally, I think it's a great one for annotations. It's just easy. I can open a PowerPoint like this. I could even open a blank PowerPoint slide and use it as my whiteboard space to annotate over. But when you are sharing your screen, there is a whiteboard that you can select in Zoom to be able to annotate over that information. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about, I'm gonna, clear my annotations here. There we go. We'll talk a little bit about the forum tool in Sakai. When we talk about Sakai forums, I want you to think of it like a filing cabinet. The forum is the drawer. It has items on a specific category that all belong in the same group. Within that drawer, there are file folders. Those folders are what we call topics. Each topic is specific, and it's a thing that you want students to talk about related to the drawer itself. Within the file folder are documents. Each document is the conversation that students are having about the particular topic. So if we take a look at what our forums look like in Sakai, you'll get a better sense of how this functions. So you can see that I have, by default, everybody has a sandbox, or not a sandbox, they have a course forum, so whatever the course title is, that has a default general discussion topic. But within that, I can create other drawers, categories, or forums on specific things. So genetics in the news. This is a forum I created. A topic within that forum is genetically modified foods. I might create another topic, and this topic might be genetically, we'll call it designer, because that's fun. Designer babies. So I might have students provide all the information for them. What is the description? What are they going to be talking about? If there's a rubric for a discussion forum, or maybe an article associated with the forum, I can attach that. You can adjust how you want posts done. So you could require moderation. That means you have to look at everyone and approve it before it can be posted. A nice option for students sometimes is require them to post before they can see anyone else. So this would be a nice option you might want to enable. Do not set the post as anonymous unless you never want to know who created the post, because you can't undo this. Once it's set to anonymous, it is completely anonymous and there's no way to get it back. You can set when it shows or when it opens and closes. You can also set grading. So I didn't create a forum post ahead of time. So I would have to go into my gradebook, create forum assignment, and then I can choose that item from my gradebook. Otherwise, I can go back and do that later. And once there, I can save settings and add that topic. Oops. So now if I take a look at genetics in the news, this forum is called Genetics in the News, and it has 2 different topics for students to discuss. If I go back to forums, you'll see I also have a weekly reflections forum. This is where I would create my reflections, and I would create one for each week. So what's important is to think about the higher level feedback or the higher level category that you want to create, and then organize the topics within that. If I create a forum, and I'm going to go ahead and leave everything here. I click save. you'll see it tells me you have to create a topic for this forum in order for it to be active. If I switch to the student access view, that forum does not even show because it's not something I can access as a student. You have to always create a topic within that. So this might be for problem sets 1 through 5. Again, I can fill in all or as little of the information as I want here and then save that. You'll notice all those groups were there, so I could set a forum up to be just for a specific group as well, which is a nice feature for that group to have their own forum space to work in. So now I have a topic. If I go back into student view, here we go, I can actually interact with this. Okay. One other thing that you'll want to know about forums, since you may be reading through those and providing some assessment, is the statistics and grading. In this section, I'll get an overview. It is not 100% accurate. The authored will be accurate. The rest of it will not be accurate because you have to manually click mark as read on each post in order for it to be counted as read. A lot of students don't do that, but this would allow me to see what each person has authored. And if there were posts here, I could see the exact messages that they've authored. I could also see the ones that they've marked as read, and I can click on those specific posts and be able to go in and read those posts as part of the thread to see how they're participating in a conversation. So if you're going through and grading, this is the place that you're going to want to go through and look at how students are doing and what posts they've made. Okay. So from forums, we will talk a little bit about instructional materials. So you might be asked to create some materials. So as we mentioned earlier, Panopto is the tool that the university provides that allows you to create recordings, especially for lectures, also for screen sharing. As you've seen, you can also utilize Zoom as well. If you are going to use Zoom, I strongly encourage you, when you record it, to record it locally and upload it to Panopto. Like I said, any recordings that you're creating, any media that you're posting to the course should be housed in Panopto because it's unlimited cloud storage. Also, when you are adding things to Panopto, there are some statistics that you can look at to see which students have actually watched a video, how much of it they have gone through, and how much time they have spent. So they may have completed 100% of a video, but they did that in 5 minutes, and you know it was a 40-minute lecture that was posted. You know that they just skimmed through that. So sometimes that can be a useful tool, and some faculty do prefer to utilize that. In terms of presenting instructional material, you might be asked to upload information into Sakai. We encourage the use of lesson tools, so you'll want to look in a course and see if they have something like a week 1, week 2. That's where you would want to include any PDFs, resources, various materials, even embedding videos on those weekly pages to help organize and structure information into weekly chunks so that students know how to proceed through a course. You also want to make sure that things are accessible. So things like adding those closed captions, if you are putting in images, adding alt text, so in case someone has images off or has a visual impairment and can't see them. And we offer on our Office of Online Learning website an accessibility guidelines document as well as a self-paced training. So if you want to learn more about some of the tips that you can use to create more accessible pages, if you're asked to create pages, that would be a great place to take a look. And then we encourage welcome modules, but not every faculty member does utilize that. So if you happen to be in a course that is utilizing that, take a look, make sure that the information, makes sense and helps to structure how the course is actually going to be laid out for students. So in terms of lessons, tool, and resources, I'll show you briefly. You probably won't be creating actual courses. We tend to do that with faculty, or faculty do that themselves. But in case you're asked to add some items to a particular course, if I take a look at a weekly lesson structure, so it might have outcomes, it might have a checklist, some articles that are in our resources, as well as a discussion and an assignment that students need to complete. To add items, it's a matter of choosing the plus signs above or below an item. If you click on the one above, the new content gets added above. If you click on the one below, new content gets added below. Items that you can include on a page. Text, you can embed content, so YouTube videos, TED Talks, Panopto videos, other items that allow for embeddable text codes. You can add content links, so this would be direct uploads of files from your computer or selecting resources from the resource folder. You can add entire resource folders. This is what I recommend to faculty. If they have readings for a week, make a folder by week, import all of the documents that you want students to read, and add the folder to the page. That way, if you need to add a reading or you need to take away a reading, you don't have to rebuild the page, you just edit the folder. We can link to assignments, tests and quizzes, forums, announcements, add checklists, questions, comments. So you have a variety of tools that you can utilize. Again, the primary ones are going to be things like adding text, adding resource folders, links to assignments, tests, quizzes, forums, and, possibly content links and embed codes. For any box that's existing, you have edit buttons, and then you can go through and use the rich text editor to provide things such as hyperlinks, or if you're adding images, if you are adding in a different kind of media, so media that you are uploading from a folder on your computer, this would be where you would put that in. Again, we encourage Panopto, but if you have a very small one, you could also insert it here. In terms of resources, this is just your folder file structure. So each course will have a basic structure. I encourage uploading materials by week. This allows you to upload PDFs, Word documents, PowerPoints, a variety of items, and you can see those lists of items here. You can even add web links. You can create documents. You can create citation lists. So a variety of resources can be added here, and then those can be linked to from the various weekly pages so that students have easier access to those materials. Okay, too many screens, there we go. All right, so moving on from there, a little bit about communication and feedback. I've kind of touched on this. So make sure you understand what the plan is from the instructor that you're working with. Make sure that you understand what tools are being used for communication, what types of communication formats are expected. Make sure that there's a reasonable response time. Again, 24 to 48 hours for emails, and feedback within 7 days for assignments and assessments. And as we've looked at some of the tools that you can use, forums, you can use the announcements tool that can be broadcast to everybody in the course, or they can use the email tool built into Sakai, which is great for group work. It does not save a record of those communications though, so it's important to make sure that you're aware of that if you select to use that tool. And then of course your LUC email, that's the best way to work directly with students so that there's a record of those communications. In terms of using those tools, I'll show you those briefly. They're both quite simple tools and easy to use. So in terms of announcements, at the top are our options. So I can add an announcement since we are a little less than a week out. We'll just say, okay. This could be my day one, my intro. Thanks for joining us. Here I would put in my, my welcome. Any other information that I need students to have. And then I can choose how this is viewable. Generally, you want only the members of the site. I can set when it's available. So I can just show it immediately. I can create it as a draft so that I can start it now and come back to it later. I can also set specific dates. I really like specific dates, so I can go ahead and set up everything ahead of time, certain things that I know need to go out, and then I can say exactly when I want them to be released. And then I always set them to end, a week after the course. So it creates a nice way to set up and schedule how you're going to use your time and plan for communicating with students. You can also add attachments. So your announcement may be welcome to the first week and here's the syllabus. Or if you're facilitating group projects, you might include some resources that go with that project. Here you can set email notifications. Some students have notifications from Sakai turned off. So if this is a high priority announcement that you need everyone to see, you could select hi, all participants, and they will get an email even if they have the notifications turned off. So this is great for things such as class is going to be canceled, sync session is canceled for some reason. That way you know that students are getting that in two different places. One when they log into Sakai and then also in their Loyola email. Once you have set those settings, you can post that announcement. Students will see that in the overview page of their course. So you'll see it shows up right here. They will also, if I set that notification, get that as an email. The other tool, and I don't even think I have it in here. I don't. I'll add that real quick, would be the email tool. The benefit with the email tool is simply that the email tool allows students and you to have easy access to the email addresses of everyone that's in the course. So I don't have to go search for email addresses when I want to send an email to someone specifically in the course. So I can search by role, I can search by section, I can search by group. I can also, if this is an actual course, you'll see all your student participants. So I don't have a full course, but this would say students, and it would show me all the students. I can select the student that I want to send the email to and email them directly. Remember though, this does not keep a record of this message. It's only inside Sakai and there's no record of it. So we always recommend selecting send me a copy. That will go to your LUC email. That way you have an additional record of that information. Okay, so those are two different tools that might be utilized in your courses to communicate with students. And that takes us to that all-important, any questions? I know that was a rush and a lot of information, and we went longer than I had originally planned, but hopefully you have a better sense of how to interact in Sakai and in general when facilitating different aspects of online courses.
Okay, our chat box is quiet at the moment. I'm wondering if folks are just kind of like letting it all wash over them now.
Right, and this is one of the reasons why we say don't do long synchronous sessions. Everybody gets a little sleepy in the afternoons and you can only absorb so much information. So this has been recorded. You can go back and review different pieces of it later.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to put this recording again, as well as the other recordings from our orientation activities this morning and yesterday on the orientation website for the graduate school. So that's luc.edu/grad/school/orientation. So you will be able to access all of that information at a later date. So thank you so much, Brianna, for sharing your time and expertise with us today. To all the students in attendance, thank you for taking your time. I do want to encourage you as well to keep an eye out for other online learning support activities and events and other courses that are offered over the course of the year. We try to share that information on Grad Announce, which you will all receive weekly on Mondays. So do keep your eyes open for that information, because you will you'll see a lot of great things that are happening on campus virtually over the course of the next semester. All right, so thank you so much. Everyone have a great afternoon.